The With Purpose podcast is not to be intended to treat or diagnose any medical condition. The With Purpose podcast discusses traumatic events, toxic relationships, and abuse. These topics may be triggering to some people. The content shared and stories told by With Purpose and its guests is for informational and entertainment purposes solely and is not to be intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, medical provider, or therapist. The use of any information that is shared on this podcast or its content that is shared is at the user's own risk. Thanks for joining me. My name's Amy, and you have tuned in to With Purpose. And today we are going to go through the importance of journaling, especially if you have gotten out of a toxic relationship or you've been in a controlling relationship with someone that's very manipulative. You may start questioning yourself as you start to date, and you might feel a little bit insecure no matter how long it's been since you've actually dated. And I'm going to give you a couple tips here. And the first tip is to keep a dating journal. So I want you to go get a journal and or just a couple sheets of paper when you're dating. And that way, whenever you are going out with somebody, you can jot down some of the things that you noticed in these dates. Some of the things you liked, some of the things you didn't like, and really pay close attention if maybe some of these are toxic behaviors. So go get a journal, and then in the very beginning of this, what you want to do is write down, let's say, 3 non-negotiables. You don't want to fill up your entire page, right? But what are the things that you are absolutely without any reason whatsoever that you just cannot bend on? What is something that is very important to you, things that you value? For me, it's Christianity. If, someone's not a Christian, that is one thing that I write down, and I know that that is going to be very important to me, and that is just something that no matter how many traits somebody has, I know that that's one of my non-negotiables and not to move that relationship any further. So write down the things that are really important to you. Maybe you don't want to date somebody long distance. Maybe you can't handle somebody that has several children. This is the part where you really want to be honest with yourself, and because you don't want to hurt somebody else down the road and you don't want to hurt yourself down the road. So be very honest about what you know that is something that you just cannot handle. So write those things down. Here's another good tip. If you've studied anything on toxic relationships and manipulation and control, and you just indulge yourself in narcissism and sociopathic tendencies, and you've gotten some education on this, and now you have knowledge, and now you know what to look for, we don't want to share that with anybody on the first date. We want to keep that to ourselves. This is something that, just think about it as, knowledge is power. And we don't want to just volunteer that, hey, we know all about these controlling traits and we know all about these bad behaviors, because all that's going to do is give him the go-ahead to start paying attention to what he's doing, so he makes sure he doesn't do any of these things. We don't want to give our secrets out in the very beginning. So make sure, if you have started paying attention to these things and getting your education from the experts, that we're not sharing this on date 1. Hey, by the way, I know all there is to know about love bombing, and that is not going to be in your best interest if this person is toxic. So we don't want to give them the one up and give them the information that's only going to make them turn around and try harder not to do these things and to try to conceal them as much as possible. Another thing when you're starting to date is that, not everybody deserves to hear your story, no matter what that story is. Not in the first couple dates. We just don't want to lay out toxic relationships that we've had. We don't want to give them, an overshare all the things that they need to know about us, and this is going to be in your best interest moving forward. We don't want to just give them tips on things that they can weaponize against you later down the road if this person is toxic. So we don't want to tell them that we know about these traits right off the bat, and we don't want to share our intimate personal stories and all the things that we've been through, because if this person is controlling, manipulative, narcissistic, they're just going to take that and they're just going to start, collecting eggs in their basket. So we don't want to give them any tips on that. One thing you do want to do is ask the right questions. And, maybe if you're going to get into relationship past and things like that, without oversharing what you've been through and getting into some really intimate things, pay attention to, hey, you might want to ask them, what was your traits, or what was something that you worked on from your previous relationships? What happened there? And just kind of touch the surface of that. Ask questions where he's going to be able to, or he would, it would be right if he would tell you, hey, this is what I did. This was my part in it. See if there's any accountability whatsoever on his end. If he is one of these people that just blame the ex is crazy, all I've ever dated was people that were nutso, yada, 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 their fault, then we already are getting a clue that this person really isn't one to take a look at their self and be accountable and try to do some self-work, because we all need to look at these things and these traits, and we all need to make sure that if we see something that probably isn't that pleasant, that we try to work on those things and we try to learn the best ways we possibly can to love each other. Pay attention. And this is the last thing that we'll go through. Pay attention if they ask you questions. If they're coming to this date and all they're doing is telling you, hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I want. This is what appeals to me. This is what I've been searching for and I haven't found it yet. If it is just, me, all about me and all what they want, and they're just telling you basically, hey, it doesn't really matter what you're looking for. Let me tell you everything that I've been on the hunt for. This is a huge red flag. They need to be asking you questions and things that, that you enjoy, and things, questions that would make anybody think they're really interested in me and they care about my hobbies and things that I enjoy. So pay attention if they're only discussing what they're looking for and they haven't asked you anything about what's important to you in a partner and what are you looking for. So that's kind of a quick little just rundown on some things you may want to do and write down in your journal prior to going on these dates. That way you've already written down your non-negotiables. We're not going to, bend on those, and you really do have to stick to that. Sometimes it may be difficult, but you know what you're going to get down the road if you do get into a dating situation where you continue to see somebody whenever, they're doing one of these things or they have these traits or whatever it is. If it's a non-negotiable and you just kind of swept it under the rug, this is the point where we need to acknowledge the things that we need to be accountable for, and we need to make sure that we're treating ourselves the best way we possibly can. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, please do that, and I'll see you